I never thought I would be the man to write these words. I was a husband, a father of three, a man who believed he had control over his life. Yet the moment I decided to live two lives at once, everything started to slip through my fingers. It began quietly, almost innocently. Long nights at the office, business trips, excuses that even I half believed. That's when I met Elena. She was wild, unpredictable, intoxicating. Everything my wife Anna wasn't. With her, I felt alive again, like I had escaped the dull rhythm of responsibility. But every time I came back home, Anna's eyes seemed to follow me, calm yet sharp, as if she already knew. One evening, as I was pulling on my coat, Anna asked softly, "Will you be home for dinner?" I kissed her cheek and lied, "Don't wait for me. Big project." My daughters Sophie and Amelia were playing near the fireplace while little David waved his toy car at me. They had no idea their father was building a secret life. For months I lived between two worlds. With Elena, there was fire and passion. At home, there was duty and routine. But all lies eventually crawl into the light. It was a Sunday afternoon when it all collapsed. I walked through the door still carrying Elena's perfume on my shirt. Anna didn't shout. She just set the table, served lunch, and then slid her phone in front of me. On the screen was a photo, me and Elena, laughing, arms around each other. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "How long?" My throat went dry. I muttered, 6 months. She didn't throw plates, didn't scream. She only said one thing, "Then it's my turn." At first I thought it was just anger speaking, but Anna was not a woman of empty threats. A week later, she started staying out late. She laughed at her phone more often. Her eyes sparkled in ways I hadn't seen in years. One night she came home after midnight, her lipstick smudged, her hair slightly out of place. "Where were you?" I demanded. She smirked. "Now you know how it feels." The children began to notice. Sophie once asked, "Daddy, why are you and Mommy always angry?" I had no answer. The worst part came when I discovered who she was seeing. It wasn't a stranger. It was Michael, my best friend, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, who held David at his baptism. When I confronted him outside a bar, my fist clenched. I shouted, "You? With my wife?" He didn't even deny it. He just shrugged. "Maybe now you'll understand what you've thrown away." I punched him, but he didn't fight back. That broke me more than his words. From then on, our home turned poisonous. Anna and I still lived under the same roof, but the silence between us was worse than shouting. She flaunted Michael openly, making sure I would hear of their dinners, their walks. And I was too weak to end things with Elena. Pride kept me bound to my mistakes, even as guilt consumed me. The children tried to keep us together in their innocent way. David once drew a picture of the five of us, smiling and holding hands. I nearly broke down when I saw it. But the war between Anna and me was already too far gone. The final collapse came during Christmas. The house was decorated, the smell of cinnamon filled the air, and for a brief moment I thought we might pretend to be whole again for the children's sake. But then the doorbell rang, and there stood Elena, smiling as if she belonged there. "I thought you'd invite me," she said casually. Anna froze. The children stared. And in that silence, I realized I had destroyed the only world that truly mattered. Anna whispered, her eyes burning with betrayal and triumph. "Merry Christmas, darling. This is the family you chose." And she walked out, leaving me with Elena's presence like a knife in the heart. Now the house is quiet most nights. The children stay with Anna more than with me. Michael is still by her side. Elena disappeared the moment things grew ugly. And I am left with nothing but the echo of what I ruined. I lost my family because I thought I could have it all. And in the end, all I proved is that betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it burns entire lives to ash. The silence of the empty house nearly drove me insane. Days blurred into nights, and nights into empty bottles of whiskey. At first I told myself I still had time, that Anna would come back once her anger cooled, that the children would forgive me if I just waited. But time has a cruel way of proving you wrong. One evening, David called me from Anna's phone. His small voice cracked my heart. "Daddy, why don't you come to my soccer game anymore?" I froze. I didn't even know he had games. "I'll be there," I promised. I'll come to the next one. And I did. Standing at the edge of the field, I watched him run, his hair shining in the sunlight, his little legs pumping with determination. Sophie and Amelia cheered from the sidelines, Anna standing behind them. When her eyes met mine, they were cold, unreadable. But at least she didn't turn away. After the game, David ran to me shouting, "We won! Did you see me, Daddy?" I hugged him tightly. "I saw everything, champ. You were amazing." Anna approached slowly. She didn't smile. "You don't get to just show up when it's convenient," she said sharply. I swallowed hard. "I'm trying, Anna. I know I failed, but I'm trying." She looked at me for a long moment, then shook her head. Trying doesn't erase the damage. Weeks passed. I stopped seeing Elena, finally cutting the cord to the affair that had poisoned everything. It was too late, but at least it was a start. I visited the kids every weekend, took them to the park, helped Sophie with her school project, listened to Amelia's endless stories about her dolls. Each smile from them felt like a second chance, even if it was only partial. One night as I tucked Amelia into bed at my apartment, she whispered, "Mommy says you lied a lot. Will you lie to us too?" Her words crushed me. I held her tiny hand and whispered back, "Never again, I promise." The hardest moment came when I saw Michael again. He came to pick up Anna from a cafe where we had met to talk about custody. He put his arm around her as if he owned her. I clenched my fists, my blood boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had already destroyed too much by losing control once. "Take care of her," I muttered, though it tasted like poison on my tongue. He gave me a look that was neither smug nor kind. "You had your chance," he said simply, and led her away. I realized then that Anna would never truly come back to me. The marriage was gone, but the children, they were still my blood, my hope. So I began to rebuild myself, not for Anna, not even for forgiveness, but for them. I quit drinking. I focused on my work. I kept my promises. Slowly they began to trust me again. One night, after another of David's games, Sophie came up to me and said, "You're different now. Mommy says you're trying to be better." I smiled through the sting in my eyes. "I am, sweetheart. I'll never stop trying." Anna stood a few feet away, watching. For the first time in months, she didn't look at me with anger. Only sadness. Maybe even a hint of respect. She walked over quietly and said, "Don't disappoint them again." I nodded. "I won't." And in that moment, I knew the truth. I would never get Anna back, but I could still save what mattered most, the love of my children and the man I was meant to be. Because sometimes redemption isn't about winning back what you lost. It's about proving you're no longer the person who destroyed it. Continuation of the story, A Father's Redemption. The weeks turned into months, and I slowly learned how to live in the ruins I had created. The house I once shared with Anna and the children was now filled with silence. My apartment felt more like a prison than a home. But in that silence, I found something I hadn't had in years. Time to think, time to see who I had become. I began to realize that I couldn't fight for Anna anymore. She was gone. Her love burned away in the flames of betrayal. But my children, Sophie, Amelia, and David, they were still within reach. They were the reason I had to get up in the morning, the reason I had to claw my way back from the man I had become. The children. Every Friday evening, I picked them up from Anna's house. The first few times were stiff, awkward. David avoided looking at me, Sophie barely spoke, and Amelia clung to her mother's side as if afraid I would disappear again. But little by little, things began to change. One evening, as I cooked pasta in my small kitchen, Amelia tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, can I help?" she asked, her big eyes searching mine. "Of course," I said, handing her a wooden spoon. "You're my assistant chef tonight." She giggled, spilling sauce on the counter, and for the first time in months, the sound of a child's laughter filled my home. Sophie was harder to reach. She had seen too much, understood too much for her age. One night, as she did her homework at the table, she asked without looking up, "Daddy, why did you hurt Mommy?" I froze. My throat tightened. "I was selfish," I admitted softly. "I made mistakes I can never undo. But I promise you, Sophie, I'll never hurt you or your brother or sister. Never again. She looked at me then, her eyes searching my face for lies. Finally, she nodded once and went back to her math problems. That small nod felt like the first brick laid in rebuilding the bridge I had burned. David, my son, came around slowly too. At first he was quiet, guarded. But after one of his soccer games, as we drove back together, he said suddenly, "You know, you used to miss all my games." "I know," I said, my chest aching. "I'll never miss another one, I promise." He didn't answer. But at the next game, when he scored a goal, he looked straight at me before celebrating. That look was worth more than forgiveness. It was a chance. Anna and the distance Anna and I spoke only when necessary. She was polite, professional, but distant. There were no more fights, no more heated words, only silence. One night as I dropped the children off, I lingered at the doorway. "Anna," I said quietly, "thank you for letting me see them so often." She crossed her arms. "They're your children. I won't keep them from you. But don't mistake that for forgiveness." "I don't expect forgiveness," I replied. "I just want to be the father they deserve." For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Sadness, maybe even a trace of the woman I once knew. But then Michael's car pulled up, and she turned away. The stranger. It was on a rainy Tuesday that I met her. Not in a bar, not in some reckless midnight decision like Elena. I met her in the most ordinary place, the library. I had taken Sophie there for a school project. As I searched for a book, I heard laughter. A woman with chestnut hair was helping Sophie find the right shelf. When I approached, she smiled politely. "Your daughter has a sharp mind," she said. "Yeah," I replied, surprised at the warmth in her voice. "She gets it from her mother." The woman introduced herself as Claire, a teacher who volunteered at the library in her free time. We spoke briefly, nothing more than small talk, but when Sophie tugged my hand and whispered, "She's nice, Daddy," I felt something stir inside me, something I thought was dead. The slow healing. Over the next weeks, I saw Claire again, always at the library. Sometimes she was organizing books, sometimes reading with children. She had a quiet strength, a kindness that wasn't forced. One afternoon, as rain poured outside, she sat across from me at a table. "You look tired," she said gently. I laughed bitterly. "Divorce does that to you." Her eyes softened. "It also gives you a chance to start over." I didn't know why, but I believed her. The turning point months later, Sophie invited Claire to her school recital. I hadn't even asked. Sophie did it on her own. Claire came, sitting with me and the children in the audience. When Sophie sang, she looked at both of us, her parents and Claire, and for once there was no tension, only pride. After the recital, Anna approached. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Claire. "So this is the new one," she said coldly. "Anna, please," I began, but Claire stepped forward. "I'm not here to replace anyone. I just care about the children." Anna studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly, though her jaw was tight. The choice. As the years passed, the wounds didn't fully heal, but they scarred over. Anna stayed with Michael, though I sometimes saw sadness in her eyes. We spoke less and less, until our conversations were only about schedules and school events. Claire, on the other hand, became a part of my life slowly, carefully. She never pushed, never demanded. She simply stayed. The children grew to love her. Even Sophie, who once distrusted everyone, called her Aunt Claire before long. One night, as I tucked David into bed, he asked sleepily, "Daddy, do you love Claire?" I hesitated. Then I smiled. "Yes, I think I do." He grinned. "Good, she makes you smile again." The redemption. Now, years later, I look back and see the man I once was. Selfish, arrogant, blind. I destroyed my marriage. I wounded my wife. I hurt my children. But life, in its cruel and merciful way, gave me a second chance. Not to fix what I broke, but to build something new. Anna will never come back to me, and that's the price I'll carry forever. But my children know I am there for them. They know I love them. And with Claire, I found a kind of peace I never thought I'd deserve. Sometimes when we all sit together at the dinner table, me, Claire, Sophie, Amelia, David, I feel the ache of the past. But I also feel something stronger. Hope. Because redemption isn't about erasing your sins. It's about proving every day that you are no longer the man who committed them. And that finally is who I have become. Continuation of the story. When children grow, time has a strange way of softening the sharp edges of pain. The wounds I left on my family never truly disappeared, but they dulled with the passing years. My children grew older. Sophie into a thoughtful teenager, Amelia into a wild dreamer, and David into a boy who carried far too much responsibility for his age. I tried to give them stability. Every weekend we spent together became a ritual. Friday night movies with popcorn, Saturday morning pancakes, long walks in the park. But as they grew, the questions came. Questions I had been dreading. Sophie's confrontation. One evening, Sophie sat across from me at the kitchen table, her homework spread out but forgotten. She stared at me with eyes too old for her 15 years. "Dad," she said quietly, "why did you really cheat on Mom?" The words hit me like a blade. I tried to breathe, but it felt like the air had turned heavy. "I was weak," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I thought I needed more than what I had. But the truth is, what I had was already everything, and I destroyed it." She didn't look away. "Do you still love Mom?" I nodded slowly. "Part of me always will. She gave me you, your brother, and your sister. But love isn't enough when trust is broken." Sophie was silent for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Sometimes I hate you for what you did, but I also hate that I still love you anyway." Tears stung my eyes. "You don't have to forgive me, Sophie. All I ask is that you let me prove I'm better now." She sighed, closing her notebook. "We'll see." Amelia's rebellion. Amelia was different. She was fire, unpredictable, like Elena once was. But with innocence, I prayed wouldn't be corrupted. At 13, she started sneaking out, meeting friends I didn't know, experimenting with makeup and clothes that made her look older. One night, I caught her climbing back in through her window at midnight. "Amelia," I whispered harshly, "what are you doing?" She froze, her eyes wide. "I just went out for a walk." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my voice breaking with fear more than anger. Her chin lifted defiantly. "You lied to us for years. Why can't I?" The words cut deeper than she knew. I felt my chest tighten. "Because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did." Her expression softened, just for a moment. "Then stop treating me like a child. Talk to me, not at me." I realized then that if I wanted to keep her close, I had to be honest, brutally honest. And so I told her stories of my mistakes, of the nights I thought lies would save me, and how in the end, lies destroyed everything. She listened, silent but thoughtful. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a bridge. David's burden. David, my boy, carried the weight of being the man of the house when I left. Even as he grew, I could see it in his posture, in the way he protected his sisters. At 14, he was strong, athletic, but there was always a shadow behind his eyes. One afternoon after soccer practice, he sat in the car beside me, staring out the window. "Dad," he said suddenly, "I don't ever want to be like you." The words crushed me. I gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Good, you shouldn't. Be better than me. Be honest, be faithful, be strong." He turned then, his eyes full of something between anger and sadness. "Do you even realize how much you hurt Mom?" "I realize it every single day," I whispered. "It never leaves me." David was silent, but I saw the tears he tried to hide. And for the first time, I understood that his anger wasn't just at me. It was at the fact that he still loved me, even when he didn't want to. Anna and Anna stayed with Michael, though I noticed cracks in their perfect facade. Sometimes when I dropped the children off, I caught Michael's impatient tone, or the way Anna avoided his touch. One evening, as I stood outside waiting for the kids, Anna stepped out alone. "Michael's away on business," she said flatly. I nodded. "Are you happy?" She looked at me with tired eyes. "Happiness is complicated." "Anna," I said softly, "I know I lost my right to ask, but if he ever hurts you—" She cut me off sharply. "Don't play the hero now. You lost that chance years ago. I lowered my gaze. I'm just saying, I still care. Her silence lingered, heavy with everything unsaid. Then the children burst out of the house and the moment was gone. Claire and the new beginning. Through all of this, Claire stayed by my side. She never tried to take Anna's place, never tried to replace their mother. Instead, she was simply there. Kind, steady, supportive. One night after the children had gone to bed, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever feel like they'll never forgive you?" I nodded. "Every day." She touched my hand. "Then all you can do is keep showing them who you are now, not who you were." Her words anchored me. Without Claire, I might have drowned in my own regret. The twist of fate. Years later, fate played its cruel hand again. Michael left Anna. Rumors spread of another woman, younger, prettier. The irony wasn't lost on me. Anna had tasted the same betrayal she once used against me. One evening, she showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her voice unsteady. "He left," she whispered. "He left me the same way you did." I wanted to comfort her, to say something that would make it better, but all I could do was pull her into the living room and listen as she cried. "I thought I was punishing you back then," she said bitterly, "but all I did was punish myself." "Anna," I whispered, my chest aching. "I'm sorry for everything." She looked up at me, her face a mixture of pain and exhaustion. "It's too late for us, but maybe not too late for you to finally be the man you were supposed to be." The legacy now, as I write these words, my children are no longer children. Sophie is preparing for university, Amelia is chasing dreams of becoming an artist, and David, my boy, wants to study law, to fight for justice where his father once failed. Anna and I are not together, but we share something unbreakable. Three souls who carry both our mistakes and our hopes. And Claire, she remains my anchor, my second chance at a kind of love that doesn't burn but heals. Do I still regret? Every day. But I have learned that life doesn't offer erasers. It only gives us pens and the courage to write the next chapter better than the last. The years passed faster than I could ever imagine. Sophie turned 18 before I knew it, packing her bags for university. I stood in the doorway as she zipped up her last suitcase. She looked at me with the same serious eyes she had as a child, only sharper now. "Promise me, Dad," she said, "that you'll take care of Amelia and David while I'm gone. They need you more than ever." "I promise," I whispered, pulling her into a hug. She stiffened at first, but then wrapped her arms around me. It was the first time in years she'd hugged me without hesitation. Amelia, on the other hand, was already wild with dreams of moving to the city to study art. She filled her sketchbooks with drawings of broken families, of burning houses, of hands reaching out, but never touching. One evening, I found her sitting on the balcony staring at the horizon. "Do you hate me for what I did to your mother?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "I don't hate you, but sometimes, when I draw, I think about how different things could have been. Maybe if you hadn't lied, we'd all be living together in one house still." I swallowed hard. "I know, and I can't change it. But I'll never stop being here for you." David grew into a strong young man. At 17, he was taller than me, his voice deeper, his confidence unshakable. One night as we sat together after his soccer match, he said, "Dad, I've been accepted into law school. I want to fight for people who've been wronged, so they don't end up like Mom." My throat tightened. "I'm proud of you, son. More than words can say." He looked at me seriously. "I'll never cheat on the people I love. I want you to know that." The words were sharp, deliberate, but I nodded. "Good. Be the man I couldn't be. Be better." Anna and I remained tied together only through the children. She rarely smiled at me, though time had softened her anger. Sometimes I caught her staring at me during family gatherings, and there was no hatred in her eyes anymore, just a tired acceptance. One evening, after Sophie's graduation, she approached me while everyone else was laughing and celebrating. "You did well with them," she said quietly. I almost laughed from the shock of hearing something close to praise. "We both did. They're amazing." She nodded. "Don't ruin it again." And then she walked away to join David and Amelia. Claire stayed by my side through it all. She never pushed herself into the spotlight, but was always there, steady as stone. One night, as we sat on the porch, she took my hand and whispered, "Do you realize what you've done? You've turned regret into strength. They'll carry that with them." I looked at her, the woman who had given me a second chance at love, and for once, I allowed myself to believe her. Years rolled into decades. Sophie became a lawyer like her brother had dreamed of. Amelia held her first art exhibition. David stood tall in a courtroom, fighting for people who had no voice. They each built lives of their own, stronger than the one I had given them as children. Now, in the quiet of my older years, I sit surrounded by photographs, the children as babies, as teenagers, as adults. They visit often, bringing their families, filling the house with laughter I thought I'd lost forever. Sometimes even Anna joins, sitting across the table from me. We don't talk about the past anymore. It lives in silence between us, but it no longer burns. One evening, as the sun set outside and the grandchildren played in the yard, Sophie sat beside me. She leaned her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was a child. "You kept your promise," she said softly. Tears blurred my vision as I kissed her forehead. "I'll keep it until the day I die." And for the first time in a lifetime, I felt at peace. The years slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. My children grew into adults, then into parents themselves. Sophie became a professor of law, Amelia an artist whose paintings now hang in galleries, and David a lawyer with a reputation for tearing down injustice in courtrooms. They built lives far greater than the broken foundations I once left them on. I never stopped marveling at the people they became. Each time I watched them, I wondered if they would have been the same had I not made my mistakes. Did my betrayal shape them into the strong, resilient souls they are now? Or did they grow despite me, carrying my sins as scars that made them tougher? My hair grew white, my hands slower, my back weaker. The house was quieter now, though filled with memories. Claire stayed by my side through every ache of old age, through every lonely evening, through every regret that resurfaced in the silence. Sometimes she would look at me and smile in that gentle way of hers. "You've carried your burden long enough," she'd whisper. "Let it rest." But the past never truly rests. One summer afternoon, the family gathered in my garden. The smell of grilled food filled the air, and the sound of children's laughter danced like music. My grandchildren ran through the grass, chasing one another, their voices echoing in the warm air. Sophie sat with her husband, laughing. Amelia sketched the scene on a notepad, and David argued playfully with one of his nephews about soccer. I sat in my chair, a blanket over my knees, watching them all. For once, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. When the children finally tired themselves out, one of my granddaughters, Lily, climbed onto my lap. Her eyes, bright and innocent, reminded me of Amelia's when she was small. "Grandpa," she asked, "tell us a story, a real one." I looked around. All my children turned to me then, quietly. They knew what she was really asking. They knew the story that had haunted all of us. My throat tightened, but I nodded. "All right," I said softly. "But it's not a happy story. It's the story of the greatest mistake of my life." The grandchildren sat around me in a circle, wide-eyed. My children listened too, silent, their faces serious, and I began. I told them about how I had once been foolish enough to think I could live two lives, how I betrayed their grandmother, how I lied, how I almost lost everything. I didn't spare the ugly details. I told them how Anna had found out, how she had taken revenge, how Michael had been involved, and how the family nearly collapsed. I told them of the nights I cried alone, the days when the children hated me, the endless regret that ate at me. Sophie's eyes glistened with tears. Amelia's hands tightened around her sketchbook. David clenched his jaw. They had heard pieces of the story before, but never from my lips in its full truth. At the end, I said quietly, "I thought betrayal would only break my marriage, but it almost destroyed my children too. And that is a sin no father should ever carry." Silence fell. Then Lily asked in her small voice, "But you're good now, right, Grandpa?" I smiled weakly, tears blurring my sight. "I try every day to be. And maybe that's what matters. Not that I was perfect, but that I never stopped trying to be better. David finally spoke, his voice steady. You did try, and you gave us everything after. That's why we're here today. Sophie leaned forward, her hand on mine. You broke us once, but you also rebuilt us. And for that, I forgive you. Amelia wiped her eyes, whispering, Me too. And in that moment, the weight I had carried for decades seemed to lift, just a little. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in orange and violet, I looked at my family, the generations I had almost destroyed, but somehow, by grace or by stubborn love, had helped to rebuild. I realized then that my story was not one of ruin, but of redemption. That love, no matter how broken, could still be mended in new shapes. That sometimes the greatest gift we can give is not perfection, but honesty, persistence, and the courage to change. When the grandchildren finally ran off to play again, I leaned back in my chair, my eyes heavy with age, but my heart light for the first time in years. I had betrayed, I had lost, I had suffered. But I had also endured, rebuilt, and loved. And in the end, surrounded by the laughter of my children and their children, I knew one thing with certainty. I had finally come home.